A question I sometimes get is how do I go about creating new chord shapes? So there's a lot of different ways of doing this of varying degrees of difficulty, but here are 3 methods that I use. The first, probably the hardest method, is this very theoretical way of going about things. So this starts with a couple core pieces of knowledge that you need to know. So the first is an intimate knowledge of the note names on your fretboard and their position. So for example, knowing where all of the E notes are on your fretboard, stuff like that. The second is to know what kinds of chords you even want to play. So let's say I want to create different kinds of major 9, minor 9, sus2, you name it. You need to know what those chords are. And the next component is to know the interval formulas and the note names that are associated with that for those kind of chords. Let's say I wanted to do something simple like create an E minor chord. So to do that and to create a new shape without having learned someone's pre-existing shape, I need to know that an E minor chord is built from the interval formula of a root, flat 3, and a perfect fifth. Now, I need to know those intervals from the note E, which is my root. So we have the note E, and then the flat 3 is going to be G, and the perfect fifth is B. So now let's try and apply all of that. So for example, this is an open E, so we can start here. Now, we could grab this note B, and we grab this note G. If we actually just look at the rest of our fretboard, we have a G, we have a B, and an E. So if I play that, I have a new E minor shape that maybe I haven't tried before. Let's try another example. So we could start on B here, and I see an E that we could grab, and there's a G. So we have another E minor chord. Now, maybe another example, let's try something like E major 9. So to start, we need to know the interval formula. So we need a root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, major 7th, and major 9th. Now from E, those are going to be the notes E, G sharp, B, D sharp, and F sharp. So any combination of those notes, I mean, if we're using the theory of inversion, we can play those notes in any order we want. As long as they're there, we have the chord. Anyways, we'll start easy again, open E. So we need E, and let's grab our 9. So there's our F sharp. There's our 3rd, the G sharp. There's our D sharp. And here's our B. So there's an E major 9 chord that maybe I haven't tried yet. We can add that open high E string. So anyways, we're thinking about a chord shape. We're aware of where the notes are on our fretboard, and then we're applying the formula that corresponds to that shape in order to create that sound. For the next technique, this is a lot more simple. So this idea is to take a stock chord shape that you've already learned. Let's say we're going through our shell voicings, something like that. As a side note, if you want to know what these are, I have a bunch of videos on just essential 7th chord shapes in standard tuning. Definitely check that out, as that will help you to be able to apply what I'm about to say next. So let's say we start with a simple shape like this E minor 7 chord. So maybe we've played this a billion times and we're bored of it. An easy way to create a new shape out of this is to just take one of the notes and move it elsewhere. So if I take that middle note and move it, all of a sudden I have this new chord. Let's say we don't know what it is. Well, as long as we're at least aware of our notes in this key, like our scale pattern at least. So let's say I don't actually know the note names of what it is I'm playing, but I know all these scale patterns. And so if I start with this and I know that I'm moving to a note that's in my key, it's going to be somewhat coherent. So we can take another note, move it elsewhere. Let's say we want to add in some open notes to this too. Now we're coming across all kinds of new interesting chord shapes that maybe we haven't tried before without having the hassle, although the specificity of needing to know all this music theory to come up with these sounds. Let's try another example. So let's say I take good old G major 7 here. Let's say I played this a billion times, I'm bored of this. So we'll do the same thing where I take the top note or the middle note and let's say I move it down. So now we have this really cool, very emo-y chord. For some, this is maybe something you've never tried before, and that would freshen things up. We can add to the chord. So let's say I've got a free middle finger here. I'm going to add my, I have a free pointer finger, which I'm going to add to the E string here. And now we have a really fat sound. What if we add the open notes? So they're interesting. I think I prefer it without. Let's try one more example here. So a pre-existing chord that we already know is something like an A chord. So if I take this A chord here and maybe I try to play some of the notes as open notes. So I'm going to take actually the bar just off. Well, we get this really nice open shape here, which is really cool. Or if I put the pointer finger back down on the A string and play the rest as open, we have this really nice A add 9 sound, which I use a lot in my music. It's very nice. So anyways, we take a pre-existing chord shape and we just move some elements around, add and subtract, and that's a way to create some great new chords. For the final technique of the day, of the video, but not the final technique in terms of how to create chords in general, we're going to try and use our ear to create something. So when we're doing this, we want to start with something and just listen to the sounds as they precede each other and just evaluate whether you like what you're hearing one after the other. So if you know absolutely no music theory, if you don't know your scale patterns, or if you're playing in an alternate tuning where maybe you're just forced into a situation where you don't know the fretboard that well, this is probably how you're going to operate. So all we need to do is just listen and evaluate, go very slow. And actually you can create melodies and lines like this too. So if I just start with something like this. So if I like those 2 notes, that's all I need. But experiment as well. So grab around. Grab around and stop when you feel sort of inspired by something. So this is cool. So now, actually, let's go with something that's a little more reasonable to reach. So I like that. And now we just find the next note. That sounds good after this, as if it was almost like a melody. I like that. That's cool. So now we'll maybe try the G string. Just as an open note. It's a little bit redundant. So maybe I like that. That's cool. And that works for me. So now we have this new chord shape, just sort of born out of listening and making decisions one after the other, whether you like the chord or not. And this is an important skill for sure, because we're using our ear, we're making music. Our ear has to be a big part of what it is we're doing. And when it comes to all of these techniques, I should say that the ear should play a large part in what it is that you're doing. I mean, if you don't like the sounds, whether you're using music theory or just moving stuff around with your fingers, then there's not really much of a point of sticking to that chord. So use your ear, first and foremost, to evaluate whether what you're playing is even something that you want to play. Anyways, I hope that helps, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.